Action! Welcome to Paul's Old Ass Movie Classics. Today, we are joined by Drew Stewart, of course, my partner in crime for this series. And today, we are going to be watching Stalag 17 from 1953. And you can watch it now on Tubi, Roku channel, or Pluto TV. And this is, of course, directed by Billy Wilder, who also directed Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard. It's also written by Billy Wilder, who also wrote those two films, among others, and Edward Blum, who also wrote Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and Donald Bevan, who I believe he wrote the play, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I read that earlier. Because this is based off a play about the guys that actually did this. No, I mean, not the based on their experiences. Obviously, it's not a full-on autobiography or whatever, but
Right.
it also stars William Holden, who won Best Actor Award for his role in this, Don Taylor and Otto Preminger. And you may know that name. He's actually a pretty well-known director as well. You would know him from
Anatomy of a Murder.
Anatomy of a Murder, and there's a big
Laura, which is a super famous film noir.
Exodus. Exodus is a big film that's like when you see a lot of like the early like Moses movies, a lot of it's from Exodus. So he's a directed tons of stuff though. So Otto Preminger, big time name.
3 hours and 28 minutes.
Yeah, that's like the classic one. Like, yeah, if
Ooh.
you've ever seen Moses Bible scenes, it's probably from Exodus. So
Ooh. The
and
Irish.
this yeah, and this movie is about after two Americans are killed while escaping from a German POW camp in World War II, the barracks black marketeer, J.J. Sefton, and that's William Holden, is suspected of being an informer. This has an IMDb rating of 8, box office. The budget was 1.6 and it grossed 3.3, which is obviously solid. That's double return. And so let's get right into it, Drew. What would you say is your favorite thing about this film?
Apologies in advance. I felt like I needed to sneeze for like the last 10 minutes, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear. I didn't text you on purpose for this. Sometimes I like throw out like sort of feelers to you for a movie we were watching. I'm interested to hear your take. I didn't like this movie that much.
Really?
Yeah, and I acknowledge it's supposed to be great and all that good stuff, but I don't know. So I guess my favorite part I would say is the fact that it is loosely based on like real stories. Like you said, the playwright I think was in Stalag 17B or something in World War II, and so he
Yeah.
obviously garnered some of his real life experience that went into this. So I like that. I like that its provenance is with somebody that experienced this. I like how it humanizes soldiers that are prisoners of war. All of that I thought was good, and I like that. Where I think it missed for me, and I think that this was in its effort to do kind of what I just said, which was like humanize, and these are just regular guys, and they try to find a way to like make it happen. But like the slapstick portions of this, like those two, I don't even care to know their names. The two idiots,
Yeah.
they're like always messing around and like painting
Animal and yeah.
whatever, painting the line over into the Russian side and onto the guy, and somehow they weren't shot. Like those,
Shapiro.
yeah,
Shapiro and Animal, I believe, were the two guys.
those two, I don't know. Maybe they're supposed to be like, in MASH, like Hawkeye, and like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
see, they're the predecessor to him. Maybe people liked that, but to me, they drove me absolutely crazy. I would have I would have, I don't know, thrown them out to be German Shepherd meat if I had to bunk with them because they're idiots. So
Yeah.
they drove me crazy, and that kind of hurt the movie for me. But I did like the fact that it was sort of meant to humanize them and based on somewhat loosely on people that had been there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess we're probably on different sides of the aisle here. I, the looseness of it is actually kind of why I liked it because it juxtaposes nicely. I mean, we just saw last week Bridge of the River Kwai, and that was just so serious and with pretty much zero humor. And this movie was almost the opposite, where I'm gonna go like 75% humor. I mean, even the relationship between the guards and the Stalag 17 or Barrack 4, excuse me, what was on a lighter tone. So I think that's why I did enjoy about the film was just it was just a different type of film that we've seen. And obviously Billy Wilder is arguably one of the best, you know, either you want to call him rom-com or just comedy directors in general. He was one of the preeminent guys that kind of started the genre. Obviously, Charlie Chaplin's probably considered the godfather among like Buster Keaton, but Billy Wilder is like the next guy. And and so it was definitely an interesting take on, I thought, again, like a genre that we have seen, or even all the other military films. This was a little bit different. And this obviously I would maybe equate it more to like Some Like It Hot, because it was pretty similarly toned. And so yeah, I mean, I was okay with that. Like I said, I thought for me, it was just nice to see a different approach because sometimes these movies just they're just don't add any humor whatsoever. And so maybe there's a balance in between it. But for me, knowing that it was Billy Wilder, I think I was fine with this approach. And again, definitely coming off of 3 hour David Lean's film, I think for me it
Yeah.
was like, all right, I'm good with the slapstick. Like, how believable was it? That's the interesting part, right? Because it's based off of a real guy's adventure or a play, but maybe the play is really serious, and then Billy Wilder just took it to another level. That part I actually don't know, but I'd be curious. Um, so
But
maybe go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's incredibly well rated. It's on every list of the best war films. It won an Oscar, for Holden. So I'm not saying I'm correct
Sure.
at all. And Billy Wilder, like you said, is famous for this type of slapstick stuff. So for whatever reason, that pair rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe I'm just like putting myself in that position and knowing my temperament. Like if
Yeah.
I was a prisoner of war, dude, I don't need that. Maybe, but again, I've never been a prisoner of war, so maybe I would need that. But for whatever reason, it just kind of it turned me off to the film a little bit. But it did pick up speed for me, and I did like the end. So we'll get to some of that. But I don't want to say I didn't like the film, but I didn't like it as much as I probably feel like most people do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, that's again part, and it's also important that we're watching this, you know,
It's good that we don't
almost
necessarily always agree.
70 years later. We're watching
Yeah.
it 70 years later, so completely different lens. And I think our own experiences with other movies will definitely also like gear us to another way. Like I said, I might have a different opinion about this movie not watching Bridge of the River Kwai the week before.
Sure.
I can't tell you that that probably influenced me, because if I have to pick between those two movies, I mean, besides the cinematography of Bridge on the River Kwai, like I would rather watch this movie again. One, because it's not 3 hours long, but two, there is just more to it. There's even more action in it because, man, I mean, Bridge on the River Kwai had almost no action in it. Whereas this had a few scenes. I like like I said, I like how it wrapped up with the ending, and I thought it was a very clever, kind of who done it, because we really didn't know, and obviously they try and make you believe one way and then go another way, but uh I just liked how it kind of almost like,
I thought that was well done. The reveal I thought was really well done.
yeah, almost like Clue, it was like, this is what happens, and dun, 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 and kind of goes through the whole like scenario, and I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought all that, and maybe that's why this movie was so highly revered, is because that ending I feel was pretty well done and unique even till today. And I think that's, if I have to say if this movie holds up the most, it's probably, I think, because of that. Maybe not so much the comedy as much as, obviously, I think, we're maybe split on that. I'm not saying that even the comedy was like hilarious or anything, but it was, like I said, I just liked that they were having a good time versus um everyone's miserable and hating their lives. And then again, like there are movies like that, and they work, and then there's movies like this which takes the opposite approach, and everybody's just trying to get through it and have a good time. And yeah, so I could see it go both ways. So I mean, maybe I know this answer already, but does this movie hold up for you?
Not really. Like
Yeah.
I felt like for me the comedy kind of derailed it.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I'm gonna stick with my original gut and say for me it did not, but I'm happy to hear how it did.
I mean, I feel like I kind of covered that
Yeah.
already, so we don't need to harp on that. But we can go right into our contemporary comparison. And
I really want, yeah, I was struggling. I wanted to go like the war route, just obviously because it's a war film. But I actually ended up going with it just escaped me. Oh
well,
my
I'll go
God.
with mine. I'll go with mine while you think about it. I went with a different, I mean, kind of similar, but also like definitely maybe similar in tone, where it's kind of up and down. Has some light moments. A lot of comedic actors are in it, but then it's also about World War II, and it's Monuments Men, which is directed by George Clooney. Matt Damon's in it. Bill Murray, John Goodman.
Yeah.
I'm 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 trying to remember who else is in it, but a very comedic cast. There's some very light moments into it, but then there's also this serious undertone because obviously there's still war and all that good stuff. So I thought that was like a pretty decent comparison, and it's actually a modern one. You should be proud of me, Drew.
For
Most of my
sure.
modern is the 80s and 90s for some reason, but
Yeah, that's like at least after 2010.
yeah.
That's good. For me, I remember what it was. And this is very imperfect. I didn't, to be honest with you, put a ton of thought into it. But for me, it was the Hateful Eight. Kind of, it's not war, but like all of these people stuck in this cabin together, and just sort of like seeing all the
Yeah.
things play out, a little bit of mystery. So for me, it was Hateful Eight.
Nice. Yeah. And then lastly, and I guess I probably already know your answer on this one, but should this movie be remade today, and who should it star?
Yes, you don't know my answer. Yes, it should be remade.
Oh,
I would
okay.
like to see it remade. I would like to see it remade, maybe tinkering with some of the parts that really bothered me the most, like some of the slapstick. Um, and who should be in it? In my mind, I was kind of thinking for Holden's character. I kept having Chris Evans in my head, because he's both kind of like it can be, he obviously plays heroic, but he also can be has like a villainous side. For some reason I don't like. I think he's a great actor, but I don't like Chris Evans, and I think in part because of a lot of his roles and just sort of how he is in them. And so for me, for this role, I think he would be kind of perfect because he's kind of like an unlikable hero.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna give necessarily specifics, but another contemporary comparison, which I think will help me do the casting, would be like an Ocean's 11, where it's like I feel like this could be that incredible ensemble piece where, let's just say, a George Clooney directs it, and then it's like, all right, let me bring on Brad Pitt and Matt Damon, and you can fill in all these other characters with all your buddies
Yeah.
and all that. But I can literally see the cast of Ocean's 11 doing this and absolutely crushing it, because it also had that kind of vibe. Not obviously like the stylistic, like that Steven Soderbergh brought to it,
Yeah.
but with, just like you're saying, the dealing with the multiple personalities, and again, just some of the back and forth between the characters. I would just go Ocean's 11 cast. That would totally work for me. Or again, even like Monuments Men again works as well. A lot of the similar actors, of course. So
Yeah.
I think going that route wouldn't be a bad route. All right. Well, so I guess I'll try and sum it up for you, audience. Uh, I'll say this is a toss-up one. I feel like if you'd like Billy Wilder's comedy, then I feel like you'll like this film. I feel this is a good representation of who he is as a comedic director.
I
Uh,
agree with that.
but if you've never, well, if you've never seen a Billy Wilder film, I would say check out those main two ones. I think those are his two best films, Double Indemnity, Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard, I'd probably give the edge over Double Indemnity, but Double Indemnity also is like film noir legend. So if you like film noir the most, I would go with that one over Sunset Boulevard. But I love Sunset Boulevard. That's one of my favorite films. And then with the comedy wise, like Some Like It Hot. So if you've never seen a Billy Wilder comedy, Some Like It Hot is like his epitome. So check those out. Then I would say check out Stalag 17. I don't think this is his best film, but I still think it's an interesting premise, and I think it definitely pays off at the end. So even for the ending, I think it's worth it. It's not that long of a film. I mean, it was 2 hours, but I thought it moved decently, and the
Yeah,
performance,
I'll give it that. I was never bored.
yeah.
Like it got right into it. Like that all was fine.
I thought it would just be more. I just thought this would also be kind of like Bridge of the River Kwai. I thought it'd be a little bit more action, but I guess I just didn't know the film. I
Yeah.
thought this was just more of a war film, but this is really not a war film at all. It's just a war time film, like we talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah, so take it for what it's worth. Like I said, that's the whole point of this podcast is to you know broaden our horizons. This is one of the I think positives out of this podcast, even just us doing it, is discovering a channel like Tubi that has great content that is free. Obviously, there's ads, but you used to have to pay for something like that on cable.
Yeah.
It's like to me, Tubi's kind of like a USA Network, where
Hmm.
it's like you're gonna get a lot. They have some different stuff that other streaming channels don't, and then again the ability to watch some of these older films. So check out Tubi if you haven't yet. Again, it's free. It's also on Roku channel, which is also very similar, and Pluto TV as well. All these TV, again, as the streaming services are being redefined, they're going back to kind of an ad-based system, but you don't have to pay for it like you used to with cable. So that's one of the benefits, I think. And oh, like on Tubi, another good example. I watched. There's a TMZ documentary on O.J. Simpson, but it's from Harvey Levin, who was actually a entertainment reporter at that time, and so he talks about his experiences, and it's kind of a crazy story. Here's some stories you've never really heard about. I mean, I'm not saying he's cracking the case wide open because I feel like the case has already
Correct.
been cracked, but it's some interesting points that I've never heard before, and I've seen a lot of the different O.J. Simpson stuff. So it was a very good watch. So I highly recommend it. So Tubi, check it out. So that's going to lead us now into our top five Oscar-nominated actors from the 1950s. And what we mean by that is this isn't just the winners that won Best Oscar in the 1950s. This is anybody that was their performance was nominated from 1950 to 1959. So just so we clear, we wanted to open up the base a little bit more because we're not experts by any stretch of the imagination of the 1950s. Obviously, we weren't born then, but we've seen enough performances within the 1950s that we can come up with a solid list. Now, again, viewer discretion. I know I'm not seeing all the movies that were nominated, so my bad to some of the great actors that will not be on my list because of that. Drew, I'm assuming is the same thing, but we
I
did.
was astonished at how many of the films I had not seen of the like nominated actors list.
Well, there's a few. I mean, again, the beautiful part is there's a couple films I'm like, oh, I want to see that one.
For
Like
sure.
the defined ones. That was one right away. I'm like, I need to see that one. And I
It's
feel like,
definitely putting in perspective for me that I've seen a million 1940s films
yeah,
and a lot of 60s and 70s, but the 50s I think are a gap for me.
yeah, I like the 50s. 50s are a real golden era, I believe. So, yeah. So let's start. We'll do Snake like we normally do. So let's start with your number five.
It would be hard to leave him off the list. Um, just because he's iconic and this is an iconic role in an iconic decade for him. But I'm going to do Charlton Heston and Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
I like a lot of Charlton Heston movies. He's sneaky as like a horrible actor. Like I think it's interesting like he was in great roles and in great movies, but the more I watch him, the more I'm like, eh. But I will give him a shout out, Charlton Heston and Ben-Hur.
Nice. I kind of did similar, and this is almost like a lifetime achievement award. I would not
Right.
say this was my favorite movie with him, but it was the only film in the 1950s that he's on because he's more probably of a 40s actors. And he's in one of my favorite 1940s films. But I have seen this film, and he was still solid in it, and his rapport with Katharine Hepburn was solid in it still. So I'm gonna
I
go
know.
Humphrey Bogart for African Queen. Decent film, entertaining. Kind of actually, if you want to comp on that one is Jungle Cruise. I mean, it's I know 100% it's influenced by it because it's a very similar script. Besides the exterior stuff, that makes sense. But in terms of just a quick premise, I mean, it's about a guy down the river and the relationship between him and female, and that's what that movie is. So,
With the added benefit of Katharine Hepburn in the most annoying character maybe ever on film.
yeah, she's rough in that one. My number four was your number five, but Charlton Heston, Ben-Hur, kind of the same thing, but it's definitely one of his more iconic roles, and obviously he's got the incredible voice. He does narration later in his life, but want to give a shout out to him. Ben-Hur is just a classic, and I had to give him his nod.
For sure. I'm gonna go back to back films that we just watched. I'm gonna go Holden for Stalag 17 for my number four. He's not as prevalent in the film as you might expect. Like there's a lot of time spent like looking at other characters and stuff. Obviously he won an Oscar for it, but I was a little bit surprised with sort of how small his screen time was,
Yeah,
sort of comparatively. But I thought he was really great. He is very cool. Like he just exudes cool.
yeah.
And thought that he did a great job there in sort of his aloof manner in this film. So
He's a sneaky all-time actor.
he's really
Yeah,
good, and I don't give
he
him
does
enough
not
credit.
get the accolades that
Oh, he's really
all the
good.
rest of these guys on our list he's probably the least underrated. He's probably the most underrated actor out of all of this, but he's got an incredible resume. Obviously, I know he's got a star on the Walk of Fame. I haven't, but I mean, he's a truly one of the greats.
I I agree. And watching him in back-to-back weeks has sort of solidified that I need to give him a little bit more credit than I ever have. He's
Yeah,
awesome. For me, number three is Alec Guinness's character in Bridge Over River Kwai. We talked a little bit about last week. I know that it wasn't necessarily our favorite film, especially out of the gate, but it did grow on me. And he is, I think I said last week, like he has it. Like he just has that
yeah,
it factor, and he kind of steals every scene he's in that film.
yeah. I don't disagree, and I'm glad you put him on the list because I think he's deserving. He was probably my number six or seven on my list, but I had to give you'll when you see my one, two, three, then you'll understand why I didn't include him. But my number three was William Holden, but for a different role, and I'm surprised we're differing on this one. But I went Sunset Boulevard, and him in Sunset Boulevard. I mean, that's I think the film that really made me for him like really to stand out. But again, I mentioned earlier, I absolutely love this film. In terms of pre-1980 films, this is probably going to be in my top five.
It's
Uh,
probably been 20 years since I've seen it, which is what, like, that's the only reason I didn't choose it because I need to go back and
yeah,
see it. It's been too
I,
long.
I've seen this movie again with pre-1980 films. I feel like I've seen it three or four times,
Okay.
and that's a lot for me. It's not like I
Yeah.
watch a lot of these older films a ton. The Searchers is probably the most watched film I've seen, but Sunset Boulevard might be like two or three. You know,
I need to check it out.
yeah. And then my number two, and this might be a lot of people's number one, and it's arguably his greatest performance, but I had to go Marlon Brando, and I went with on the Waterfront. He had a few to choose from. Streetcar Named Desire, Julius Caesar, I believe, was another one.
He was like 4 years in a row or something, right?
Yeah, he's in a ton. So I had to put Marlon Brando on this list because I mean, I yeah, to get nominated for four different roles, I think would just be idiotic on both of our parts. But I put him on the Waterfront because I think that's definitely his most iconic role, and really just a different side of him that, because he's so used to being, again, that's the greatness of his character in that one. You think he's just a strong character, and by the end, he's just really this weak and beat up man. And that's really where the performance thrives.
Yeah. Number two for me is also Marlon Brando for On the Waterfront.
All right,
I
cheers.
was, yeah, I was going back and forth. I had to put him on the list. On the Waterfront is my favorite of those films, and I think, like you said, arguably, it's up maybe on his performance there is maybe on the Mount Rushmore of Hollywood acting.
Yeah.
So Marlon Brando. And then number one is one of my favorite actors. He is so much more far-ranging than I think people give him credit for. You just kind of see him as a lot of people just see him as sort of It's a Wonderful Life. But I went James Stewart and Anatomy of a Murder, which I had not seen until recently, and it is so well done and
Yeah.
it's so risque for the time. Like some of the themes and actually the language that they used, I was kind of surprised at. And Jimmy Stewart is does what he does. He steals the show. He's excellent in it. And for me, just sort of like the totality of how I feel about him as an actor, I put him as the number one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember if I've seen this movie or not. I'm gonna say I haven't. No, it's 2 hours and 41 minutes. I haven't seen that one. But it's that was a movie like I knew I was just too uneducated on, and so it
Yeah.
didn't include in my list, as well as like the Defiant ones. That's another one. Like those are the two movies I'm like, I gotta see these movies. Like, what am I doing? But my number one, which again, it's also like one of my favorite movies of the whole era. But I went with Gary Cooper, High Noon. And High Noon, again, like it's up there with Sunset Boulevard. I've probably seen it three or four times. And, it's the classic, you know, everyone's out to get you. You got to stand up for yourself type movie. I mean, this was when you talk about the blacklisting in Hollywood, this film it was like that, put on a pedestal in terms of that. And it was really just so well conceived
Yeah.
within a Western setting. And, I just, yeah, that movie really, I think was just so well done. And Gary Cooper just nailed the role, and also diverse, I think, actor. He was also Joe DiMaggio in Pride of the Yankees.
Yeah. He's been in a ton.
He's been in a ton of stuff, but he's an incredible actor and just has that it. Like all these actors, they have that it factor. I mean, both of our lists, are heavy hitting all-time great actors, and so this was a very good list to do. That's why we switched to this. We were going to do the Billy Wilder one, but I feel like we should watch a little bit more Billy Wilder films so we can get a
Yeah.
little bit educated on it. But I was like, we can do this one. And I think this one will have a little bit better time talking about it. And so, yeah.
Like I said, it reminded me I need to watch a lot more 50s films that I haven't seen.
Yeah, for sure. And then that's why again, a channel like Tubi is going to be really clutch for that. Max also, because it has TCM, your old Turner Classic Movies. That's a part of that. So yeah, we'll keep doing that. We might possibly, and this will be more up to Drew, but we might possibly try and do this 2 times a week, just because it's doing so well, and I wouldn't mind checking out too.
Yeah.
I've kind of started to do it anyways, so we would just have to shoot a podcast for it. So we're in consideration, guys. It's not an official announcement yet, but yeah. But all right, that's going to wrap it up for this week. Next week's film, we've got a all-time classic, one of the highest ranked films on IMDb that neither of us have seen. I don't think I've ever seen this one, even in film school, but it's the movie M from 1931, directed by the great Fritz Lang, and it stars Peter Lorre. And you can see this on Max, like I just mentioned. It's technically part of TCM, so if you have cable, it'll be on Turner Classic Movies, but it's on the Max app. You can go to TCM or you can search that M. But this is a classic film. It's kind of a crime thriller type movie, and it's supposed to be very, very good. So we'll check that one out.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love Peter Lorre.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Drew, for joining us. Make sure you catch us in some of our other recent episodes. We've done Wedding Crashers recently. We've also done Tombstone, among other films. And then obviously just check out last week's Old Ass Movie Classics, where we did Bridge on the River Kwai. So make sure you check those out. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And with that, Drew, that is a cut. Thanks, guys.